I am the captain now.
It almost worked in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. It did work in 2020 with Joe Biden. And it almost worked again in 2024 with Kamala Harris and this seemingly unknown Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
And I would have made millions if it hadn't been for you meddling kids. Fools.
The same little operation, 3 different elections, and Tim Walz could have very well possibly been the bankroll for the whole thing. I'm going to show you the pattern, connect the dots between Minnesota and these 3 Democrat campaigns, and explain why Nick Shirley's fraud exposure is just the tip of the iceberg. Because once you see how Walz's Minnesota operation funded and facilitated this whole thing across 3 election cycles, you'll understand why Americans don't trust a single institution anymore. Let's break it all down. And Gavin Newsom, I believe you're next.
So this is Quality Learning Center. I meant to say Quality Learning Center. We've arrived to ABC Learning Center. All the windows are blacked out. I would like to check a child in the daycare.
Why?
Can I speak to a manager? I would like to see if I could bring little Joey, my son little Joey here. Is there a paperwork or can I check out the daycare?
You got $2.66 million this year in funding and $2.5 million last year. We're just wondering where the kids are.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going.
Wow. You're right.
So
that
good.
was the old good journalism. By the way, Fox Digital reached out to that learning center to try and, get a statement from them. And apparently the number doesn't even work. So we did not get a response there.
That's some real hardcore reporting from Fox News, isn't it? They called the Learning Center. The phone didn't work. We're waiting for someone to get back from us. This is absolutely crazy that a kid in a hoodie with a cell phone and a $50 microphone is doing more than the actual news media, this institution that we're supposed to trust. I don't know if I trust a single institution in the United States right now.
Talking to, some of these different places where you visited and collectively have received millions and millions in state funds. And, I watched the 42 minutes and good for Nick Shirley. And he also was accompanied, I'm forgetting the gentleman's name who was with him, who's done so much research in this as well. The man you can see right there with the papers, who's done just as a citizen, a concerned citizen flagging this, realizing that there's big issues. So it kind of raises a question too. If concerned citizens were flagging this years ago, and then, it just, why did the government in Minnesota?
So this
Lisa Booth, God bless her heart, as my grandmother would say. This really does raise a question as the Fox News, breaking story broke down here. The real question it raises is, why are none of these people, why are none of these organizations, why are none of these news outlets doing what this kid is doing? And I say kid, he's 23 years old. He's a man. Let's treat him like a man because he's doing men's work right now. Because no one trusts any institution in the United States. Name one. Do you trust the Department of Education? No, because you're allowing the enemy to educate your children. We've seen that on college campuses. We've seen how this plays out. Do you trust the Department of Justice? I don't think I do. I'm not seeing a whole lot of movement from that level of justice and accountability that we want. I don't trust that. Do you trust the voting institution? No, because it takes California 19 days to count votes. Meanwhile, Somalia can get their election results in 24 hours. So there are institutions that we don't trust. We can all agree with that. Do you trust the capability of the judges? No, you don't. They should be impartial. We don't trust that institution. There are so many breakdowns in America right now. Churches. How many churches do you really trust when you see them getting on TV and begging for cash because God said I need a new Learjet?
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
I knew it was time to begin to believe God for a new airplane.
I don't even trust them either. But you would think that the news media would want to have just some semblance of integrity. And out of all of the news organizations, mainstream news, I would have thought Fox News would have used this opportunity.
Yeah. The Fox News decision desk is calling Arizona for Joe Biden.
To latch onto this and really run with it and try to build back some trust with the American people. But they didn't. They chose not to. Nick Shirley has absolutely ripped the Band-Aid off of this entire program, this entire system. But doesn't it make sense now how a governor from Minnesota that not many people had even heard about was just suddenly plucked out of the ether to be the vice presidential candidate for what many people would say the most qualified candidate ever, Kamala Harris, right? Is it starting to make sense now? And there's other people that are starting to agree with me as well. This is a post from DC Drano. He's one of the guys that went and got a binder and didn't do anything with it. But he makes a point here. I'll be honest, I really underestimated Tim Walz. I thought he was a bumbling fool, but I was wrong. Billions in fraud rings. Politicians that suddenly passed away after voting against the health care. Says dude's a straight capo. I really can't disagree with this post as much as I want to dissect it. Tim Walz may have fooled everyone to come out with the jazzy hand.
I think when your signature move is jazz hands, you're not as up on the white guy code maybe as you think you are.
And his wife saying she loved the smell of burning tires in the morning.
I could smell the burning tires. And I kept the windows open for as long as I could because I felt like that was such a touchstone.
But he might be right. This might be the best grift we have ever seen. Will the Department of Justice do anything about it? Well, only time will tell. Tim Pool is giving credit to Nick Shirley. Says saving the world is a choice. Nick woke up one day and decided he was going to fight. Gen Z needs more inspiration like this. Nick Shirley says, he's explaining a little about him. He's 23 years old, 100% independent. He's posted a full YouTube video every week for the last 2 years. He's got over 1 million subscribers now. And so you're building some credibility. You're building some traction. Some of the videos are amazing with what he shows just by asking questions and just scratching the surface. It takes me back to the days when I used to watch Scooby-Doo, when you had Daphne and Fred and Wilma and Shaggy and Scooby, and they were always foiling some sort of plot, some sort of scam, some sort of grift. And then at the end, they would take off the mask of the criminal, and it was always the person you never expected. And I feel like that's what it is right now with Tim Walz. Nobody expected Tim Walz to be this high-level crime boss. And maybe he isn't, but someone is. Now, here's the part that really bothers me. If you go and do a Google search on Minnesota fraud, and you can see here that none of the mainstream news organizations, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, down the line, MSDNC, The Guardian, none of them have this in the top. Now, it's a Google search. So is that being limited by something? Someone? Are they waiting this so that no one finds out more? I'll leave that for you to decide. I'm sure if you post something like this on Facebook, it's probably also going to get, not really shown to the people it should be. This is the guy that helped Nick Shirley. All right. And this is a clip of him explaining exactly what's going on. And for those of you that don't know, it's just, you can't look away. This is a bad train wreck. And I'm calling for Nick Shirley to get some kind of prize, Presidential Medal for Freedom. I don't know if there's a independent journalist award. I'm sure the mainstream media would never allow that to happen.
Going on here in the state of Minnesota, especially in Minneapolis. Explain to me what's going on with the daycares.
So one of the things that I've noticed is there's an exceptional number of child care centers that are set up mostly in Minneapolis, but also in St. Paul. And I said, wow, how many kids are there in the Twin Cities? Some of them are by my office, and I would watch, and I said, well, there aren't any kids there. And I go to another one, there aren't any kids there, and I'd see just some Somali guys outside smoking cigarettes. So I stopped at one of them, and I said, hey, I'm just wondering, I've got a grandson who's looking for childcare, and I wonder if this might be a good facility. And they said, no, we're all full. And they had the door open, and I looked, and there were no kids. There was like a couch and a table with a couple chairs. And I said, well, are the kids out back playing, or what kind of place is this? And the guy said, you go. And he almost pushed me out the door, and then he followed me down the street to my car. And that's when I said, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And that's got to be maybe 5 years ago. This fraud is so massive. When the dust settles on this, it's going to be found to be the largest fraud in the history of the country and probably the world. It's that big.
I think he could be right. And it seems right now all roads lead to Minneapolis, lead to the Minnesota governor's mansion, where people are driving by and yelling horrible words at them. And some of them are probably warranted. But we're seeing this in real time. And sadly, none of you watching trust the Department of Justice to have any accountability. That is where the giant breakdown in the United States is happening. We have no faith in the people we elect. Where's Amy Klobuchar? I think she's a Minnesota senator. Where is she at right now? Where is Keith Ellison? He's the Minnesota Attorney General. I've not seen any statements from Pam Bondi. She's not ran to Fox News this morning. There's no statement by the FBI director. There's no statement out of the White House. I hope there is. I hope President Trump sees this. He's met in a round table with Nick Shirley before. I hope the president sees this. I hope he brings the absolute thunder to Minnesota. Minnesota as a state has not voted red, Electoral College, red, since Nixon in 1972. But now we're starting to understand why Minnesota was picked to send all of these Somalian refugees to, because they needed more people for the mechanism. And this highlights it all. Silence from CBS, PBS, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, 60 Minutes. Very interesting. 60 Minutes used to do exposés like this. You remember old Andy Rooney? He used to sit behind the desk and there was the ticking clock. But it doesn't do that now. 60 Minutes just blames you for being white. They blame you for having a job. They blame you for caring about your kids. They blame you for questioning things. That's what 60 Minutes does now. It is nothing but a puff piece. They blame you for wanting to get mass deportations. They blame CCOT for being bad for criminals. Well, guess what? Prisons are supposed to be bad for criminals. Mike Cernovich brings up a very good point here. Says a reminder, this is the fraud Steve Scalise, quote, or question mark Republican, was worried about. Not Somalian fraud, not home health care, not the trillions a year stolen. It's all an act. I kind of believe this. Scalise says a proposed Medicaid cut for 35-year-olds sitting at home playing video games. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about gamers when there are literally billions of dollars leaving our taxpayers going through this Somalian laundromat, and it's probably going to Al-Shabaab back in Mogadishu, which is a horrible organization that doesn't like you. That's what's occurring right now, guys. And we've got Steve Scalise. This is his focal point, is the Medicare for gamers. There is so much corruption happening in our government right now that I don't even think we realize how vast it is. It's like trying to explain the size of space to a 5-year-old. You can't do it. They can't comprehend it. Hell, I have trouble comprehending it. That's the level of corruption. That's the level of fraud. And it all goes back. I'll ask you one question. What if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016? We would not know any of this. This would have all been silent. You would have all been shut down. I would have been shut down. Many of you were put in Facebook timeouts. But the Clinton apparatus could have been the hinge pin to really start the downfall. Now, the Democrats got what they wanted in 2020. They threaded the needle. But even that is coming into question now with the 12,000 votes in Fulton County. And now there's information coming out that there was about 320,000 votes, let's say ballots, that were suddenly found that would have changed the 2020 election. And then we get into the Biden administration, where the auto pin just magically pardons so many people. 2024 rolls back around. Trump threads the needle and gets back into office. He appoints a cabinet that we're all holding our breath for with many high expectations. And now we're seeing this. But Tim Walz on that Kamala Harris ticket, it's all starting to make sense now. They needed this to remain quiet. They needed this to remain covered up, buried. And when it didn't happen, questions started being asked. Investigations. People started to look under the rock. And we're seeing a lot of moldy, stinky stuff right now. And I got to tip my hat. Big salute to Nick Shirley. You deserve the Presidential Medal of Freedom. You deserve a Pulitzer Prize for reporting. This is damn sure better than the Watergate crap. It's damn sure better than the Russian dossier, isn't it? I got to get out of here. I got to go to church. I'm going to pray for America because right now we are the fraudulent states of America. I don't believe we're united. I believe there's so much fraud that we should probably think about changing this entire name of our country. We've got to get this back. I'll see you in the next one.